Y'all wouldn't believe I am sick again. A freaking again.
Oh, Lord. Again. A fucking again. Nothing new, nothing changed, same old shit. Same old fuck.
My immune system is a bitch and I'm fed up of her. She's cancelled. Speaking of which, today's video is going to be the booktube newbie tag 2.0. I did do the booktube, it's not the newbie tag. It's not the mother effing newbie tag. It's the real talk tag. I ain't no newbie. I will be doing the booktube real talk tag 2.0, which is a follow-up to the booktube real talk tag that was created by Books with Alyssa J. I will link her channel down below. She recreated a new version of the tag called booktube 2.0 with my good friend Julia from Julia Sapphire, so I will link their video for that as well down below, so definitely go subscribe to both of them and tell them a hoe sent you. The first question is, what advice would you give your past self when you first started making videos? And to be honest, I don't know if I'd give myself any advice, mostly because I was a hot mess and I wouldn't want to talk to that hoe, whoever she was back in the past. I like to leave her there.
Hello everyone, I hope you all are doing well. My name is Saajid and today I would like to do a book review on Written in the Stars by Saajid.
But I don't know if I'd give myself any advice, just because I feel like booktube was a learning process for me. Whether it's how I present myself in front of the camera, all of the little tricks that I use to film my videos and edit and whatnot, all of the little things that I've done over the years, all of the little mishaps, mistakes, misjudgments even when it comes to my booktube channel have been an essential part of my learning process. So I don't know if I would give myself any advice. I would just tell that bitch to keep doing what he doing. Question number 2 is, what are your thoughts on cancel culture? And I have quite a lot of thoughts on cancel culture. I feel multiple ways about it. I'm not like anti-cancel culture, but I'm also not pro-cancel culture, and I don't even really know what cancel culture is, really. I feel like people slap the term cancel culture onto anything, and that's the thing that annoys me the most. Whenever somebody is being held accountable or being called out for like actual bullshit that they do, oftentimes it's a very convenient dog whistle for them to say, oh, it's cancel culture, and then everybody agrees with them and it's like, oh yeah, everybody's so hypersensitive. But on the flip side of things, I do think that some people do get very overly critical of a person for something that just doesn't really make much sense. You know, like, are we going to cancel somebody for some stupidness that they said when they were 13 that they don't necessarily mean anymore, or back then was considered a joke and was understood as a joke, but now would be seen as just stupid and offensive? I feel like the things that we need to do when it comes to cancel culture is, first, we need to decipher whether something is a cancelable offense. Does this person deserve to be cancelled for doing this? Are they redeemable? Is this just something that we could critique and find problematic, but not necessarily throw this person by the wayside? But we should also be assessing the cancelability of the person committing said cancelable offense. So what I mean by this is, some people have huge platforms, and even when we try to cancel them, they they stay in there. The perfect example is the whole Sarah Dessen thing that happened recently. If you didn't know, basically Sarah Dessen posted a very out of context screenshot of somebody being critical of her book, and the one little screenshot that she posted made it look like this person was being really, really disgusting. But if you read the full article in the full context, what they were saying was actually quite reasonable. She posted this teeny little screenshot and posted it on Twitter, and then all of these authors started to reply to it, and I was like, oh my god, Sarah, I'm so sorry, this person is so horrible. I think Siobhan Vivian, how you say she name? Siobhan Vivian. She was like, oh, fuck that fucking bitch. And then Tiffany Jackson was like, yeah. And then Danielle Clayton was like, yeah, fuck that raggedy fucking bitch, or something like that. So, like, people were really coming on, especially on the three of them particularly. First of all, a lot of those authors were, not just them, but all of the authors replying were wrong. But the issue with me is that Sarah posted a very, very, very out of context screenshot. When I first read it, I was like, oh, that person is really mean. And then when I think about that, I actually kind of empathize with the authors who replied just a little bit, because even though they were irresponsible and they should not have replied, I understand as humans who are imperfect, who are part of the Twitter culture where, you know, everything is impulsive and we feel the need to reply to everybody and tell them we love them and tell them we feel for them or whatever. They were replying to something so and utterly and completely out of context. They didn't know better in some sense. Like, yes, they should have known better.
I should have kept my mouth claws.
But they were taking Sarah's word for it, because Sarah, in addition to being somebody with a huge platform, is somebody who a lot of those authors look up to, because she's been in the game for a long time and she has a lot of legitimacy. So if she says something, people are going to trust her. Sarah definitely got the brunt of the criticism, but a lot of people were also saying that they don't want to support Danielle Clayton anymore, or Tiffany D. Jackson and all that kind of stuff. And I'm like, okay, you could cancel Sarah Dessen and you could cancel, let's say, Tiffany D. Jackson, but who's going to feel the brunt of it more? The one with the bigger platform and millions of dollars, or the smaller author? Like, you get what I'm saying? Like, so we're quick to cancel, you know, people on the same level, but people are not on the same level. But on the flip side of that, when you empathize with the person who was bullied and who was put down and who faced social media harassment to the point where she had to come off of social media completely, then I could understand why you would be pissed at all of these authors and you wouldn't care about the power imbalances between them. And that's the other thing about cancel culture. It's like seen as this collective thing, and it is a collective thing largely, but it's also a very individual thing. Just because I don't want to read something or don't want to support an author doesn't mean that I think that everybody should do like me. And I think that's what cancel culture kind of started off as initially. People just saying, I don't like this person anymore. I don't care if they are redeemable or if they did something that was a small mistake. Like, you know, it's my prerogative as an individual to no longer support this person. But the problem is when cancel culture becomes like this big thing, you know, this huge thing that we are all expected to do. The next question is, do you consider the booktube community to be welcoming? And yeah, for the most part, I feel like we have a very cohesive sort of culture in the booktube community. I've said it before, as opposed to other communities, like maybe say the beauty community or the gaming community, where things are, where numbers are really, really high. You have people with millions upon millions of subscribers, to the point where those communities have become like mini industries. I don't think we've gotten to that point with booktube, and I don't think we ever will, because people don't read anymore. So there's only like, you know, so much space we have to grow as a community. It's not so much us being like nice to each other, polite to each other, but it's the level of support that we give to each other that makes the community so welcoming. The next question is, what are your thoughts on book consumerism, and do you feel pressured to buy books? Definitely. That's something that I'm still trying to work on, even though I've come to the point where I no longer try to buy everything that's popular because I know what's my taste. I feel like I'm still very much involved in the American young adult publishing industry. Like that constitutes the majority of the books that I read, and as somebody from the Caribbean who doesn't read as much like local shit, I could definitely be doing better. And being involved in this online, very American centric booktube community and book Twitter community and bookish online community, a lot of the things that are marketed towards me and pushed in my face are American books. And even when I read the more diverse stories, even though I try to read more books by people of color and I try to read a lot of books by Muslim people and whatnot, I'm still reading mostly American centric stories. And I think that's definitely the problem with me. Not only is consumerism pressuring me to buy books in general, period, but I feel like I'm definitely good at not giving in to buying everything that's hyped and popular. I buy a lot of books that are very niche, actually. The kind of books that I'm reading are not the kind of books that are constantly pushed in my face, but even with that little niche level of marketing, the books that I'm mostly exposed to are still American books. Sorry, my AC was making real noise. I wasn't feeling like getting up, so I just threw my slipper at it. Number 5, would you consider yourself a critical reviewer / reader? Yeah, I do talk about things that I find problematic with the books that I read. If the writing is not well, I'll talk about it. Like, yeah, I'm a critical reader, but I'm not like super focused on objectivity. I'm a very subjective reader. If I enjoy a book, that's all that matters, because I'm reading for enjoyment, honestly. Unless I read a book for school, the reason why I'm reading is purely for enjoyment. So a book could be badly written, but if I enjoy it, then I'm going to give it 5 stars, you know? A book could be beautifully written, but if I didn't like it, I'm not going to give it 5 stars, you know? So my enjoyment is what I prioritize the most. I will still mention, okay, I loved this book, but the writing was, you know, whatever. I loved this book, but I did have this small issue with it. But ultimately, my enjoyment is what I prioritize the most in terms of how I approach reviewing my books. The next question is, do you take part in readathons, and what are your thoughts on them? I do. I like readathons. The only thing is that I kind of get over my head about them. I always feel like I'll end up reading more than I actually ever do. I don't know why. I always overestimate my own abilities. I don't think it's that I overestimate my own abilities, actually. I think it's because I know that I could read 7 books in a week if I put my mind to it. The problem is that I never put my mind to it. That's the problem. And I always convince myself that I'll put my mind to it, and then I never put my mind to it. The last thing we're supposed to do is recommend a book that we feel represents issues that we are passionate about. I think I talk a lot about Muslim representation on this channel quite a lot because it's something that I'm very invested in as a Muslim. If I had to recommend like some Muslim books that I think are really good, I have 3 in particular that I would recommend. The first is All American Muslim Girl by Nadine Jolie Courtney. This is not her debut novel, but it is a YA novel about a Muslim girl who isn't very religious, but then she eventually begins to find her faith. And I think that's a really important representation because Tahira, if you didn't know, she's one of my faves. She made a whole video about Muslim representation and how one of the main things that is lacking from Muslim representation is faith, actually. So Islam is a faith at the end of the day. It's a religion, and a lot of the books that we see about Muslims are very much oriented towards culture, identity politics, Islamophobia, and you don't really get to see the connection between the main protagonists and their faith and how they feel about the faith. Now, I don't have an issue with that because I personally respect if an author doesn't want to go there because faith is very personal for some people. So I don't have a problem when, you know, books like A Very Large Expanse of Sea or Samira Ahmed's books are not very focused on the religion of Islam or what faith means to the main protagonist. In fact, I love most of those books. The issue is when that becomes the standard Muslim representation, when we kind of have this idea that that in order for a Muslim to be more palatable to a Western reader, they need to look a certain way, they need to be not very conscious or very open about their religious beliefs. You know, they're just a Muslim on paper and that's all we need to know, right? So there's this implication that, you know, the more that we talk about faith, the less appealing we'd be to a Western readership, which is not true. I've seen so many positive reviews about this book from reviewers who are not Muslim, and this book is very, very, very Muslim. It's very faith oriented, and it's basically the plot of this story is about a girl who's finding Islam. The fact that people could like these stories even if they're not Muslim just goes to show that people are interested. And I have 2 more books. So the first one is The Yard by Aliyah Inayat. So this is a book that's set here in Trinidad, and I think that is so incredibly important because I complain about this like every 5 minutes, but I am so fed up with the lack of representation of Caribbean Muslims. The Caribbean has like a huge Muslim population, especially in Trinidad, Guyana, and Suriname, and people just don't talk about us. We don't talk about our frickin' selves. You know, like we have so much things that we need to talk about as a community, but we don't have any media to look to. We don't have any books to look to. There's just nothing. There's no work being done about us. There's no stories being told about us. So how are we supposed to, you know, talk about our experience when we don't have things to look to, when we don't have, things to exemplify our experience in? And when I read this book, even though this book is also, again, not very faith heavy, it's more so about the culture, it was so relevant to my experience. The main plot of the story has nothing to do with anything that I've been through, and I didn't particularly find the characters relatable, but the community dynamic is what I found relatability in. And I think that this book didn't necessarily just quench my thirst for Caribbean Muslim representation or whatever, but what it did was kind of made me realize that, there needs to be more. Like, we need to have more stories like this that talk about the nuances and the complexities of our lives as Caribbean Muslims. I would recommend this book because I think that the more people read it, the more that we create that space for this particular type of representation. And then the last book that I want to talk about is The Love and Lives of Roxana Ali by Sabina Khan. This is another case of we don't see a lot of Muslims who practice their faith on the page. We don't see a lot of Caribbean Muslims, but we also don't see a lot of queer Muslims in a lot of the stories that we read. There are a lot of Muslims who are gay as hell. Oh, that was a very bad, that's not a good no. There are a lot of Muslims who are very gay, right? And very not straight and very not cisgender. And, oftentimes we just dismiss that both in the Muslim community and outside of the Muslim community. Whenever a queer Muslim tries to, before they could even take a breath to talk about their experiences, people in the Muslim community are ready to come down on them because, that's against Islam. And people outside of the Muslim community who hate Muslims and hate LGBT people, but mostly hate Muslims, are like, you can't be Muslim and you can't be LGBT. But people are, right? There are people at that intersection, and it's like, we need to have that platform, we need to have this space, and we need to have the opportunity to tell our stories as queer Muslims, and that's what this book kind of does. And again, it's not a perfect book. It's not like the be-all end-all of queer Muslim representation or queer representation or Muslim representation, but it's a good start. And to support this book and to read it more is to, as I said, create a space for more of this type of representation. That's everything that I had to say. This video was very rambly. I actually just saw some of the questions for the first time, so I didn't plan this ahead of time. I spoke really off the top of my head. Thank you all so much for watching this video. If you have any thoughts on any of the things that I talked about or any of the books that I mentioned, please leave them in the comments down below. All of that being said, I hope you have a lovely, lovely day, and until next time, inshallah, keep reading.